Hello, and welcome back to our revision series on early Elizabethan England, with our focus on key topic 1, Queen, Government and Religion from 1558 to 1569. Today's episode will look at the problem with Mary, Queen of Scots, and so therefore our content today is looking at the claim to the English throne of Mary, Queen of Scots and her arrival in England in 1568, along with the relationships between Elizabeth and Mary between 1568 and 1569. So Mary, Queen of Scots' claim to the throne comes through the lineage of being the great-granddaughter of Henry VII. She became Queen of Scotland at 6 days old after Henry VIII killed her father, James IV, in battle at the Battle of Flodden in 1514. She went to France to marry the King of France, who then subsequently died soon after, and so she returned to Scotland. But in the meantime, Elizabeth had helped Protestant lords defeat Mary's mother in 1560. Mary of Guise had been controlling Scotland at that point in her daughter's absence. The particular reason why Elizabeth helped the lords in Scotland was due to the constant threat of Mary, Queen of Scots and France. There was a Treaty of Edinburgh that was signed in 1560 where one of the conditions was that Mary would give up her claim to the English throne. Essentially, because of Elizabeth's lack of heir and the refusal to get married, Mary, Queen of Scots was technically the heir apparent to the throne of England. Mary didn't approve of the treaty, and she maintained her strong claim to the throne and wanted to be named Elizabeth's heir. However, Elizabeth knew that choosing Mary would divide England purely because Mary, Queen of Scots, is a Catholic, and naming her heir would severely weaken Elizabeth's position on the throne. So before her arrival in England in 1568, Mary married her second husband. So she was married to the King of France, who died, and then married Lord Darnley, who was a prominent member of Elizabeth's government, who was also Catholic, in 1565. A year later, they had a son, James, in 1566. This ends up strengthening her claim to the throne, because Lord Darnley was also a great-grandchild of Henry VII, albeit from a different lineage, and there was also a clear line of succession with regards to Mary, Queen of Scots and Lord Darnley, and then with the son James. Darnley was murdered in 1567, with Mary being suspected of being involved within his murder, and this led to Protestant Scottish lords rebelling again and forcing her to abdicate the throne of Scotland. She was sent to prison on a remote island, but Mary managed to escape and raised an army. Mary's forces were defeated, and then she fled to England in order to seek help from Elizabeth. So let's have a look at the relationships between Elizabeth and Mary, Queen of Scots. So first off, we're going to have a look at the idea of the positive, the ups. So in 1561, Mary returns to Scotland, but the country is run by Protestants. Mary therefore has little power, so is initially friendly towards Elizabeth. And in 1567, Elizabeth was shocked at the murder of Lord Darnley and sent her sympathies to Mary. Obviously, at this point, she doesn't realise that Mary is actually implicated within the murder. Let's have a look at the idea of the downs. There are more downs than ups on this one. So in 1560, Mary started displaying England's coat of arms to show her claim to the throne. And in 1565, the marriage of Darnley, who also had a claim to the throne and was explicitly against Elizabeth's wishes at the time. In 1566, the birth of James strengthened the family claim and reminded Elizabeth of her own childless state. And in 1567, Elizabeth strongly criticised Mary for marrying the chief suspect in Darnley's murder, who was the Duke of Norfolk. There's then further downs after that. So in 1568, the arrival of Mary in England, where she asked for help to regain the throne in Scotland put Elizabeth in an impossible position because she would be going against Protestant lords, which is her particular religion, and also would be re-establishing a threat of Catholicism in Scotland, which has a land border with England. In 1569, Mary was writing to France, Spain, the Pope, and English Catholics in order to gather support for her claim to the English throne. And she's also involved in the Northern Earls Rebellion that we'll come back to in key topic 2. So with regards to the idea, the extent of threat for Mary Queen of Scots. Mary Queen of Scots is threatening to Elizabeth because of her claim to the throne. She does have more legitimacy than Elizabeth, and that's mainly due to the marriage and the born out of wedlock that we looked at earlier in key topic 1. And she's also got a strong line of succession established with regards to herself and then a suitable heir to the throne in terms of James. She's also threatening because she's seen as a figurehead for Catholics, and what we've looked at with regards to demographics of England at the time is that there's still a majority of Catholics within England, particularly in the north. Not to mention the idea that she has strong support from France with regards to her claim to the throne. However, on the other side, we can say that she's not necessarily threatening because she's removed from the throne of Scotland by Protestant lords. So therefore, she doesn't really have any legitimacy and any claim to. Well, she does have a claim to the Scottish throne, but she's been easily removed by those in her government. And she's also not necessarily threatening because she didn't actually succeed in removing Elizabeth from the throne in the early years, and particularly through the Northern Earl Rebellion. She doesn't seem to, at this point in time, garner any support from Spain, the papacy, or France up to 1569. However, when we look at key topic 2 and the threats from abroad after 1569, we start to see a trend upwards of gathering support from those Catholic countries. So in summary, Mary Queen of Scots' arrival in England was a huge problem for Elizabeth. Mary had a strong claim to be next in line to the throne due to the lack of marriage and a lack of heir from Elizabeth herself. And Mary becomes the focus of a plot at court to marry her to the Duke of Norfolk in 1569. The plot develops into a rebellion of Catholic girls in the north, which is a Northern Rebellion, which we cover in the next episode. And Elizabeth did not want to take action against Mary because she was an anointed monarch. Although she's not necessarily on the throne in Scotland, she's had to abdicate. The idea is that she has been given divine right by God, that she is an anointed monarch. So therefore, any action that Elizabeth takes against Mary, in Elizabeth's mind, is that she's also then taking action against God's will. And the last point is that from 1568, Mary remains in captivity in England. That's the end of this particular session and the end of key topic 1. The next episode will look at key topic 2 and look at the idea of the challenges at home and abroad. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.